Fronts to backs. So one of the things I've said sort of all the way through is that there's no right way and wrong way of making a waistcoat. There's lots of different ways of making a waistcoat, and I make a waistcoat differently depending on how much time I've got, depending on what the fabric is, depending on how much I'm being paid, quite frankly, depending on what the end use of the waistcoat is going to be, depending on the style of the waistcoat. So when, for example, I was looking at the welt pockets that we did last week and I was thinking about the best way to teach you, I looked in various books and I found 4 different methods of doing a welt pocket, one of which I'd never done before and I didn't understand, actually. I couldn't make head nor tail of it. And then I sort of sat and I looked at it and I understood the way they'd done it in the end. And I tried to show you the way that I thought it would be easiest for you to grasp and the most straightforward way. And it's going to be, but the basic theory was always the same, that you had your little welt, your little, which you made first, and then you went through a process and you ended up with your pocket bag. And it's going to be the same with putting the fronts and the backs together. Again, I looked in various books and the basic theory is completely the same, but there are 3 or 4 slight variations on it. And I did actually do some samples of that. And I decided not to bring them in today because I think it's going to cause a bit of confusion. I think what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to show you one method that I think is the method you're going to find easiest and most straightforward, based on the fact that you're all at different skill levels and speeds and whatever. And I think you'll be able to understand the process, just like with the welt pockets, understand the process. And then next week, I'm going to show you just very quickly the slight variations. But essentially, when you're making a waistcoat, I can never get this screen the right way around. Right, I've got 2 waistcoat fronts here. This is the Chinese waistcoat, because you can see that my neck edge, like I told you last week, I've bagged through my neck edge. And hopefully you can see on here is my, I've marked in white, so I've marked my shoulder line and my side seam and my hem. So those are unfinished, okay? So my front edge and my neckline and my armhole are finished. My hem, my side seam and my shoulder are unfinished. And again, I've marked on here. This front applies if you're doing the Mongolian waistcoat or if you're doing the 18th century waistcoat. So it's got the little step here and this white line that I've marked down the front. This is my actual centre front because this is my button stand. So my neck in this case is unfinished, it's still raw. My armhole's been bagged through. My side seam is still open, my hem's still open. So there we go. Imagine we've got beautiful pockets, imagine we've got interfacing, whatever, but just to show you the process. So here's my fronts, pretty much finished, okay? And here are my backs. So again, I've just stitched in white just to show you, hopefully you can see my stitching line. So here's my top fabric, if you like, and here's my lining. So is everybody familiar with the phrase bagging through? Do you all know what bagging through means? Yeah, great. It means where you trap something sort of inside and then you turn it through. So you sew from the wrong side with something sort of inside. Actually, that's a really good question because I've never had to explain what it means before and I'm trying to think of the best way. of explaining it. It's sort of like doing something inside out, essentially. You do it inside out, and then when you turn it through to the right side. So actually, these fronts have been bagged through. I'll show you. So So this is the wrong side of my fabric. You can see on my seam allowance, and this is the wrong side. And I've stitched it with the right sides together, the right sides on the inside. I've stitched it, and then I've bagged it through. Or pulled it through, turned it through. Yeah, makes sense? So my fronts have been bagged through, and I'm now going to bag my fronts through on the back. So this is the right side of my fabric, and I'm going to line up my waistcoat like that. So here's my back, here's my fronts. So I'm going to turn that over like that. And I'm lining up through both layers of my front. So my lining and my top fabric, I'm treating them as one thing. And all your lovely tailor's tacks that you did should help you to do that, assuming you were accurate when you did them. And there we go. You can see there's my shoulder seam. So let's pin the other side.
So what you've got there is 3 layers of fabric?
At the moment, yeah.
Okay.
There we go. So this is the inside of my front. This is the outside of my front. So there's my shoulder seam. The 2 sides are looking different because this is my Chinese waistcoat with the neck edge finished, and this is the neckline if you're doing the 18th century waistcoat or the Mongolian waistcoat, because we're going to put our collar on here next week. Yep. So I'm now going to take my lining and I'm going to put that over there like that. Now, if you want to, and I suggest you do, you can actually tack this in place before you go on to the next step, because otherwise you're going to get too many pins involved. So I'm now putting my lining over here.
And is the right side of the lining facing down or is it facing up?
This is, well, to be honest, mostly with your linings, both sides, the sides are similar, aren't they? I think some people are using a shot lining.
Agree that one colour is going to be
Yeah,
on the inside.
yeah. So in theory, wrong sides, right side down, right side towards the inside. So it generally, do you remember when we just looked at bagging through, I put my right sides together and I stitched on the wrong side. So it would be the same theory with this, because ultimately you're going to have all your seam allowances on the inside. Okay, so if you look, if I fold that down, and I fold that down, this is the inside of my waistcoat. So here's my back lining, here's my front lining and my front facing, and I've got this nice clean seam. If I turn it over, it's the same. Yeah, so everything's trapped in together.
This is more of a general question when making waistcoats in the future and you have the back and the front with the top fabrics. Do you also pattern match at the shoulder?
That sort of depends on your fabric, and it depends on the period of waistcoat that you're making, because generally modern waistcoats, and actually most period waistcoats, your back is going to be, essentially your back's going to be in a cheaper fabric. I was really sad that I couldn't come to the talk that Mark Wallace gave last week, not least because I wanted to ask him about welt pockets on 18th century waistcoats, because I'm pretty sure that they didn't do them the way I taught you last week. I'm pretty sure they did them in a completely different way, but I don't know. I've looked at 18th century waistcoats before, but I've never sort of looked at them in the context of teaching pocket making. But generally, I mean, there's one here, I don't know if you can see, but here's some little ballet waistcoats. But you can see nice top fabric, and then the back is just in linen, because the waistcoat generally would be worn underneath the coat. So all those gorgeous 18th century waistcoats that Mark presumably showed you, the back was in linen or canvas or something like that. I think the only time really you do a waistcoat with the back and the front in the same fabric, I think a lot of these ethnic ones are, because they're actually worn to be seen. Mostly a waistcoat, you'd wear it under, it's designed really to be worn under a coat or under a jacket. Therefore, what's going on at the back doesn't matter. But I think these little ethnic ones, that's why we've been getting you to do the certainly the Chinese one with the front and the back in the same fabric. But in terms of matching at the shoulder, it also depends. It depends on lots of things. It depends where your shoulder seam is, whatever. But it's not something I would stress about too much, if that helps. Right, so you can see, here we are. Everything's trapped in together in one go. And this is generally the way we would make, a waistcoat today, whichever technique for bagging through, wherever we decide to bag it through from, this is going to be the theory. But it gets better, because not only am I going to trap it at the shoulder, right, just to show you again, here's my back. This is the right side of the fabric on the inside. Here are my fronts. Here's my lining. So I've trapped it at the shoulder, and I can fold my front out of the way. It's not doing any harm at all. And I'm using my my idiot marks, my notches, my balance marks to make sure that everything lines up nicely. So I've pinned my the armhole of the back. So I've pinned the top fabric and the lining together, but my front is still absolutely free. So if I pull that through, it won't go terribly well because it's pinned. But you get the idea. So my front's already been bagged through, and now I'm bagging the back. So this is trapped at the shoulder, but only at the shoulder. So I'm going to pin the other side. So here's my back lining, right side on the inside. Here's my front. It's trapped at the shoulder, otherwise I can just fold it out of the way. And I line up my back armhole. So what I can do is I can stitch all the way around this armhole and across my shoulder line, all the way up the armhole, across the shoulder line. And I can turn it through, like that. Everyone understand, yeah?
Should we clip away the canvas at the shoulder seam, or should we clip away the canvas at the neck hole?
No, I think I would leave the canvas in the shoulder seam. So if you look, when I pull it through, all my seam allowance is going towards the back because it's trapped inside, so it's all going towards the back. I would leave the canvas in there because there's no particular need to remove it, and also I'm always making things, because I mostly make for stage. I'm also always thinking about how things can be altered and sustainability, so it would be quite easy then to lengthen this waistcoat potentially through the shoulder, so I would do that.
And the neckline, should we just ignore the neckline for now on, or should we?
Yeah. Right. So here we are. So we're pinned together at the armhole, we're pinned together at the shoulder. Now, if I wanted to, I could be even more clever. So if I wanted to, I could actually line my side seam up. So this is the side seam of my front. So I've got my lining and my top fabric, and I'm treating it as one thing. And if I wanted to, I could pop that onto my lining. I could bring So if I wanted to, I'm not going to get you to do it this way today, but just to show you different ways of doing waistcoats. If I wanted to, I could potentially also trap, just like I've trapped my front between the two layers of lining at the shoulder, I could do the same thing at the side seam, so that then when I pulled it through, I'd have something that looked like that. Yeah, everybody get the idea? And if I wanted to, and I wasn't having a collar on my waistcoat, I could also join my backs, my lining and my top fabric. I could also, if I wanted to, join them at the neck, like that. It's not going to look very beautiful because it's pinned and not clipped, but can you see? And my neck, I could also bag through. And if I wanted to, I could actually bag through my back hem as well. As long as you've got a hole somewhere to turn it through, you're okay. So that's what I'm going to do next week. I'm going to bring you some samples that I've made of this process, leaving the holes in different places so you can sort of see. You can pull it through the neck, you can pull it through the side seam, you can pull it through the hem. You just have to leave a hole somewhere. Yeah. It's not very beautiful because it's pinned, but you can see I've got a finished neck, I've got a finished shoulder, I've got a finished back armhole, I've got a finished side seam, I've got a finished hem. And so this is the theory that we use sort of almost all the time for waistcoats. We would essentially finish your fronts, more or less, and trap them inside the back. So that's the process we're going to want you to use. And just unpin this. And you don't have to worry. You can squash this up out of the way. You know, don't worry that you're thinking, oh, I want to join up my bottom hem and then my fronts are in the way. You can just fold them out the way. They're trapped here at the shoulder, but that's completely free for where I want to sew my armhole. And if I wanted to do the hem, I'd literally just fold it up out the way. Look, it's not doing any harm. And I could sew that down there. Yeah, everybody with me so far? Good, right, now this is the bit where it gets slightly specific to which type of waistcoat you're doing. So let's start with anybody who's got a collar on their waistcoat. So that's going to be the 18th century waistcoat and the Mongolian waistcoat. And I think somebody, I can't remember whether it's in this group or the other group, somebody's doing a Chinese waistcoat and they wanted to put a collar on it, which is fine. So anybody who is doing a waistcoat with a collar, so what you're going to do is the steps that I've done here. This afternoon, we're going to talk about how we deal with doing up the side seam, because I've just shown you there's different methods of doing it. If we wanted to, we could potentially trap our fronts in between our two backs, our top fabric and our lining. We could even do that at the side seam. I'm going to get you to do it a slightly different way, and it's partly because we've got our little vents. If you look on your pattern, I'm pretty sure it's marked on all the patterns, you've got this little slit. I think we discussed it when we were looking, certainly when we were looking at the Mongolian waistcoat. You can see that there's this little trim that sort of goes round and it goes up the side, and there's going to be a little vent. And I'm pretty sure that when you looked at the 18th century waistcoats last week with Mark, that there would have been vents at the side here. It's for sort of ease of movement, for when you're sitting down, you know, you don't want anything sort of too tight. And sometimes, as you will have seen with the waistcoats with Mark, the front of the waistcoat, the period waistcoat, is longer than the back anyway. Let's just have a look in here. I don't know where you can see, but there's some nice line drawings here, and you can see that's the vent. So it's open. And again on this one, it's open. And it's open. So essentially, this waistcoat's much earlier, but still, you see. So this is what I'm calling the vent. It's the little sort of split in between. In your case, your fronts and your backs are going to be the same size, but you've got the vent there. We're going to do up our side seams this afternoon. And I've chosen where you're going to bag your waistcoat through and where you're not, based on the fact that we've got these little vents. So if they're not marked on your top fabrics and your linings, check with your patterns and make sure you've got this little mark, because that's going to be quite important this afternoon. So anybody who's doing the 18th century waistcoat or the Mongolian waistcoat or the Chinese waistcoat with a collar, you're going to bag your armhole and your shoulder line, and you're going to leave your neckline free. Anybody who's doing the Chinese waistcoat, technically speaking, you have a choice, because what you could do is you could actually bag through your back neckline. You could actually line those up and stitch that round in a really nice curve. And sometimes it helps if you to use a zip foot, because you can see that I've got quite a lot of bulk here, relatively speaking, because I've got my front trapped in here. I want to sew right up to the very, very edge. You need to be careful that you don't sew over onto the front when you're going around the armhole. I'll leave this on the table, and I've made this up deliberately using some really nasty thin lining so that you can sort of see through it and see what's going on the inside. So if you're doing the Chinese waistcoat, if you want to, you can actually bag round that neck curve as well. If you're not sure about doing that, we can also finish the neckline by hand. And I think I'll talk about that this afternoon. So what I'm more interested in is everybody getting the shoulders joined up and the armhole done. And there's one more step for anybody who is doing the back of their waistcoat in 2 layers of lining. So I think that's most people are doing, I think there's everybody who's doing the 18th century waistcoat, and it might be a couple of other people as well. The way I'm going to get you to put the waistcoat together is I'm going to get you to bag through the shoulders and the armholes. And what I'm going to get you to do, rather than trapping the front between the two layers of lining, because we've got our vent, what I'm going to get you to do, and I'm not showing you this properly, we're going to talk about this afternoon, but I'm going to get you to join your front lining to your back lining and your front proper fabric to your back proper fabric in one continuous seam, like that. And then you're going to fold that down like that. Yeah, so here's my seam. Here's my seam in the line. And then we're going to finish the hems and vents by hand. We'll talk about that this afternoon. But if the back of your waistcoat is in 2 layers of lining, it's not really very easy to sort of do a very nice hem on lining because it's sort of thin, horrible fabric. If you're using nice wool, you can imagine that you can hem your wool on your front, you can hem it into your canvas and you can bring your lining over and stitch it by hand nicely like that. And if you've got the back of your waistcoat in proper fabric, you can imagine that you can turn up your hem, you can hem it onto itself and you can bring your lining down. But if you've got 2 layers of lining, it would be really nasty if you tried to sort of hem this onto itself. So if you are doing a waistcoat where your back is in 2 layers of lining, I would like you to do one extra step, and I would like you to bag through the hem on your lining. And obviously on your 18th century lining, you've also got a centre back seam. It's a little bit shaped. So you're going to join, you should have 4 back pieces of lining if you're doing the 18th century. So you're going to make 2 pairs, and then I would like you to bag the hem through as well, all the way along. Yep, any questions about that? Good. So that's the theory. And obviously, in order to be able to turn it through, you're going to have to clip into your curve here, because otherwise it's not going to turn through nicely. But that's it. Yeah? All good? Fab?
I'm wondering if there isn't enough space up here for everyone. If we're down 1 tech, so there's a little less colour. So I was wondering if there might be, but if you think you'll squeeze, then that's that.
I don't know, you need to get this. Sorry.
So what's this like? Okay, so we're doing.
That's next week. That's a sort of finishing thing. It just kind of tightens it in.
So for like the 18th century one, we have like 2 pieces of the bag because I have a central bag. Are we gonna sew the central bag together?
So you should actually have 4 pieces. So you're going to sew, you can make 2 pairs.
Oh, I'll clip to where the canvas anyway.
Yes, you have.
Oh, okay. Clip the canvas away.
Yes. Without even